Yeah, it's so amazing. We're doing this on the fly, aren't we? Yeah. Anyway, so it's so amazing, isn't it? I guess we're really living in a world today of quantum mechanics, aren't we? And mechanical, classical mechanics and things doesn't really describe the things, actually. But the world of quantum mechanics is certainly elusive, and they're quite a world of bizarreness, really, known really only by probability and not necessarily a direct effect, seemingly, but contact, not direct of behaviour of one particle, certainly to influence another, separated by really even a very large distance. But such particles sort of really exist in a what's called superposition of an energetic state, you know, and it can be several simultaneous energetic states of being in more than one place at the same time. And our brain really processes information by on-off, yet holographic reality really is a ready-made pantry, really, of quantum mechanics, and you really could say sort of a bit of even a quantum sort of a witness, even, you know. But it's so amazing because, of course, you know, we began our whole program and things some time ago, but we were really talking a little bit about how 1.7 billion stored messages occurred last year, you know, by the government. And I think there's a big facility that's been put in Utah or something, that's where all this is sort of being had and stuff, you know. But I think it's sort of really amazing that just even 1 year past that 1.7 billion, you know, messages are stored, you know, to be gone through and that sort of thing. But apparently sort of all the gadgets attract and they all have bugs and things and that sort of thing. And isn't that amazing that all the legislation and stuff that's going forward, that's with all these bugs and things that are being put into the gadgets and everything, and how I see Louis Pinetti or whoever that is out there is really wants to sort of create a sort of a bit of a Pearl Harbor with the web and cyber and all of that. Are you there?
Yep.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. But it's so amazing, you know, because the power of the elite to drag stones, huge stones, you know, which we've been talking about, many, many tons even, you know, hundreds of miles and these and things, to put them up somewhere, you know, and that. But anyway, the Georgian guidestones there that everybody can have a little bit of a look at. They look sort of pretty a bit, I guess. I don't know necessarily that they agree with the writing that's on it, of course, you know. It's sort of written by people who can not necessarily even be aware of even what live food is. I think that the people who even put all the monies and everything might not even know what a natural birth is. How's that? Yeah. But I think we began really just sort of, just to recap and to go back over a little, but that we sort of really began by talking about 185 million years ago or so, that the Earth was really hit by that watery body, and, you know, not all of that sort of really eventually sort of rained down, but for some time, you know, it just sort of really was hanging in the heavens, all that water, and then the story is that all this water was above the firmament, and as the Earth cooled a little bit more, it sort of enabled it to rain, and the sort of things that have occurred in the past. But all the water allowed our planet to not only just have a great stretching and expansion and stretch marks, as all the other planets also have all the same stretch marks exactly. And then some planets have subduction as well, that have water, and our planet certainly has subduction, and that's started to occur sort of some time ago as the water became deposited along with expansion. And yet all has grown to accommodate now all the water, and by subduction you can see quite a beautiful sort of a new-looking planet as everything is remodeled and renewed, the land and all the pock marks and things washed and watered, and then you've got a forest and everything growing and that, and everything looks sort of fairly new. But you could go back in time to an ancient moonscape long before the majestic trees and the ancient grasses and these sorts of things came to be. Anyway, so certainly space is also expanded more where we are, and certainly all the planets show they definitely do have uniform expansion. I mean, that can be calculating of time past and the expansion that exists, it can looked upon as a measure of the center point of our galaxy to the average size, it's a meniscus edge. And you can look at that and its expansion to its absolute back to its zeroedness, time forward and time back calculated. But in the Toltec tradition, of course, impunity, if we're thinking of impunity with perfection, nothing exists such like that. We're doing what we can to have an accurate map of the territory, but thinking that the map is the territory. To them, they felt that was a bit of like a dead god, really. People worshipping a dead god, something historical. The wannabes or the have-beens, the wannabe or the have-been tribes, or the would-bees. So you've got a lot of would-bees, somebody's coming apparently, and people have been impressed by those stories, would-bees, and then you've got others that something might come, and that's the wannabes and their tribes, and then you've got people who really worship have-beens and has-beens, and so you've got a lot of has-beens, and then religions, a lot of religions are has-beens, and then some religions are would-bees, but the would-bees and the has-beens as fertility cults primarily, they've impressed the story to do what they can so people cannot really be here in the livingness now. But anyway, having really good receptivity is really known to deflect away any envy. And of course, all of us have really gone through situations where people can have loss and grief, and upon pacing and integrating what's lost, it's possible really to get a bit more to rah-rah, but you can't get to rah-rah if you have had grief or you're in grief, and that grief really is in the integration of loss, which is really important to be resolved. So really, in order to be able to clear away things, we need to really be able to look at the triggers and things that could cause you and other people to have been set off, and wherever that weakness was that can have caused a person to have been set off, you really need to order up that vice and be able to look at that, because otherwise, when you really have the ability to be able to look at what weakness exists, you can clear away danger, but if you don't really look where the weaknesses are, you won't be able to really clear away danger, So it really is the ability to be able to silence all adversity, and then totally have a bit of ability to be able to focus on the weakness and faults and things. And then that really does what it can as those faults and weaknesses are allowed to appear. It can disappear all the danger, and that's sort of a wonderful thing, you see. So it's good to be able to talk about the things that we have around us. But action really is taken to find out what positive adaptive reasoning does exist, because there is some positive adaptive reasoning existing behind things, even if there is some secondary negative consequence. But everything really could be just looked upon as being a prejudice that could be very easily reframed, you know. But how beautiful it is to be able to just recognize our original selves by having a picture of nature, maybe a gorgeous Bahamas, you know, on the beach. You've got coconut trees, you've got a very beautiful blue sky, gorgeous clear water and things, you know. But bit by bit, it's really possible for reform and change really to be happening, you know, and affect the transformation and start really mirroring things which should really be mirrored, you know. Things that infuriate you and infuriate should be mirrored a little bit, because that enables us to be able to recognize that, to be able to disarm those things. You know what I mean? So a mirror-like wisdom, Lukey, really is the ability to be able to reflect where you are now and going, rather than where you are have been. You know, mirror-like wisdom really is reflecting where you're going, and that's so beautiful, and that's a nice way for us to do things, isn't it? But where we really, otherwise it's just a reflection of where you've been. That's just could have been put to be a tool for deception. Yeah. But anyway, an intimate sort of terrorism is really where people just polarize and do what they can to cause others to be completely other than in their balance, and not resolving things, you know, and then people can really cause others to have fear and harm, and that's a lot of harm. But the not talking and not allowing the talking and distracted to other things and causing persons to have felt that their models were smaller internally, and then to, if you don't do this, I'm going to, blah, blah, which is intimidation and things. These are the primary modes the Toltecs talk about, which really is forms of violence, which never could ever be stood for in the ethne. And even dogs won't allow that, actually. They'll attack another dog if it's sort of acting weak, really, because it just doesn't allow that, you know. It's just, why act weak, for God's sake? You don't have to act. But what's real is real, and then when, as fear is, and that should be, that's a beautiful thing. But where fear is, and it shouldn't be, that's a bit silly, isn't it? Yeah. But anyway, we really are in need of being able to do what we can to remain more congruent and integrated in ourselves, but that sometimes the intimate terrorist behavior and that sort of thing might need to be mirrored back, you know, so the person can have some idea of what the feeling of that could be like, you know, sort of thing. So they can have a bit more choice to change their own beingness and their behavior and that sort of thing. But, so the medicine person, she or he really doesn't really have any set way to do anything at all. You just are empty and have a shawl of ocean behind the back of your eyes. You could have a bag of tools that you could do things with, what have you, but you're just completely aware, you know, that things can be done in a manner of a gentleness and that sort of thing, and that's all good too. But that they also have to have a street smarts as well. And when you're saving someone, they could have clambered all over the top of you and drowned you. And that in that situation, the person might have had to be bopped, to save them. But the medicine person really is fully able to be in a survivalist. And you could really say we're really talking about people being survivalists. Yeah. But in being a survivalist, you've really got to do what you can to clear away all of the mind reading. And most of the mind reading in the Toltec tradition was really like people thinking what other people are thinking. And that's a really very, very powerful sickness. And just the hand above the government really does everything it can, just really to do what they can to lovely cause people to mind read a lot, and that's a bit of a silly thing, isn't it? But you can't really have any idea what anybody else has got in their thinking, and why would you want to do that anyway? But 95% of the thinking that really is going on is thinking of what other people are thinking, and then how can you do that? That's called mind reading. We should stop that, yeah. But anyway, we could put an end to that, and that can really help a lot, because a lot of the thinking, I think to a degree, certainly a lot of people do think way too much, and we could just stop thinking and then just have a bit more positive thinking maybe. But any thinking really should be beneficial, mutually beneficial to be truthful, you see. Otherwise, it's just a big fat lie. Yeah. Anyway, the monatomic elements, we've really been talking a bit about it, and it really does allow us to dream and be in our dreaming selves. And how amazing is that, isn't it? Really to be able to be dreaming and have a lucidity in your dreaming, to be able to change the outcome. And bit by bit, it's possible really for us to be able to end up really receiving the most amazing gift, you know what I mean? That's the way to really look at everything, I think. That's how the natives saw everything. It was sort of wondering, well, what's the gift here, you know what I mean? How beautiful is that, eh? Whoa! They'd be just waking up and be thinking to themselves, oh, whoa, what's the gift here? And they'd be really looking for that. So how wonderful is this to be focusing on where the gift is, because there must be some sort of a gift. And where, as it is, you're focusing and you're being in your resourcefulness, you can really clear things up, you know what I mean? But I think really things need to be cleared up, aren't they? And we shouldn't really accept speech from politicians and people who really are at the bottom of the cocky's cage and not really speaking to the bird in the cage. But we really should do what we can, and we could really be aware when we are communicating with the bird in the cage, eh? And that's the best thing, isn't it? Because you really don't want to be communicating with the bottom of the cocky's cage, really. Yeah, that's not good, is it? But anyway, we've really got to keep the family together. That's a very, very important thing. And everybody out there is sort of really a beautiful baby, eh? And everybody who says other than that's a bit silly, isn't it? Somebody's behaviour could be absolutely ridiculous and stupid and should really be stopped, shouldn't it, that behaviour? But the person themselves is someone's baby. We should really remember this. Remember to just keep the baby. You can just throw the bathwater out, sort of stuff. And that's the way to do things. Very intelligent and sane, you know what I mean? Everything else a bit silly and a bit not sane. Anyway, that's another story. Keep the family together. Playfulness is the way to go. Pull your chin in, raise your eyebrows a little bit, kid rapport, lovely. You know what I mean? But anyway, consuming holy dirt, that really does. Dirt is such a lovely thing, isn't it? It's so beautiful because it just softens lovely, relaxes your tummy and softens your countenance. How lovely is that? You're just sort of open to everything, and that's a beautiful thing, isn't it? But anyway, otherwise, we could really have another than integrated self, and everything should really be nice and integrated, shouldn't it, really? Yeah. But we could be other than in our outcome and achieved selves, and I think that's a a beautiful way for us to be more in our and outcome orientated and keeping your outcome orientation in your mind. But we could just absolutely strike at what really needs more social order, couldn't we?
Mm-hmm.
And by one's own just absolute banishing and isolating behaviour of all of what's not socially correct, we could neutralise all of that, any influence, and otherwise we would have just completely lost all sort of ability to negotiate and this sort of a thing, and trying not to go on as they are doing all the time, just multiplying causes of ever more trouble, and then not to wait, and have influence, to just be otherwise succumbed, we're all with impunity, But anyway, all that could have just been encouraging more and more trouble, like a Chinese puzzle, you see. And there really is a simple path, and that's the path of least resistance, and just have a moratorium, tick the box, yes, you want reform in banking, and then everything else is really quite, cleared up a lot, you know what I mean? Anyway, that's how simple it is. But our story really has been about shiny bones, hollow bones, talking a bit about Atlantis and North America here in a time long ago. Yet this really is a story, isn't it? And that is really about our power shining much more, and remain more shining. And why shouldn't it be? We've got a beautiful infrastructure. Why don't we just take action and start taking action, you know what I mean? But anyway, we have a beautiful legacy, and that's gorgeous, isn't it? And we have an interest, and that's really lovely, and we can just be clearing away everything by breaking the ice, you know what I mean? You've got to break the ice, though, don't you think, to get rid of all that countenance, and then hopefully people who really need to be really listening good, you know what I mean? Because the part that really needs to be integrated certainly is the loving part, and got to find ways to be able to have alternative ways to be learning how to love. Sometimes people need to be bringing plants in, start looking after plants, maybe some animals, start looking after animals. But people are not really loving, they haven't sort of really looked after anything, and they need to personally, straight away. It's not good enough that you've got plastic this, plastic that in their life. You really need to be growing other people and caring about other people, and that's one thing. And then we need to acknowledge, really, that those are people who can have been part of terrorising others and stuff, and that's true, and just have to be forgiven and get on with everything and clear that away, you know what I mean, and integrate these two parts, you see. Yeah. Are you there with me, Lukey?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, good on you, mate. Oh, how amazing, isn't it? But anyway, your identity really is pristine, like the sky, and all your thinking, even the really, really good stuff, is just trash. Certainly the bad stuff's trash, but all thinking really is trashy, just rusty nails compared to your identity, which is pristine like the sky. And certainly all the good thinking that you've been doing in others is a bit trashy, really, isn't it, compared to this. Your identity is pristine like the sky, and we need to really be able to recognise how to keep your identity pristine. And you could talk about behaviour or anyone else's behaviour, and then even the behaviour which is just absolutely atrocious, like flesh-eating, continue to flesh-eat, foisting wars to fuel your coffer, doing what you can to have kept people in fear to control, and leaving fingerprints all over the place like that. It's just really criminal, isn't it? Terrible. But your identity really is pristine like the sky, even though the behaviour could have been just atrocious. But anyway, you're somebody's baby, and that's very important, and that's the way really we really are making food for our baby. we always make food for our baby, and that's the way to do things, isn't it? But story really is of your past flow of light into allowance a little more, and others really are achieving things, and we can be achieving things more, and are really being of a beautiful, nice, balanced complement. You can present yourself, and I think that's what we're doing, and we're really teaching everybody how to be nobody, and that's the best thing, isn't it? You know, people out there that are trying to be somebody are really woolly-hooded, and shamefully so, you know, need to be tuning in more to this, need to learn how to be nobody. That's right. Get rid of all that silliness, how you're trying to be somebody. You know, you're going to be the movie this and the movie that and the movie this and the movie that, and get the director this and the director that, all trying to be somebody. It's a big old woolly-hoodedness, you know. Not really of the holy tree, which is a really good wood to use, but just woolly-hooded. But anyway, that's okay. It's a bit of a jackass, and how silly is that, eh? But anyway, holy dirt really is beautiful because you can eat a little bit of it, and it's so amazing. It's just dirt. How lovely is that, eh? And you can have the stuff of life, and how beautiful. But most of all, dry land, we could see we began our whole program by just look around, you know what I mean? It was completely underwater, and if it's not underwater now, it was. And if it's not underwater now, it would be. Most everything has really been underwater. A lot of things have had a bethnic condition and things. Continents and islands have sunken into the sea, and new ones certainly have risen from the Earth's bosom. And liquid water really causes plates to float, and subduction of the Earth, and the outer crust does occur. And at some point we could be talking and getting into a bit of Lemuria, and recognised by the Lemurioid geography. We're going to our program talking a little bit about from a time gone by, the platypus and the koala and the lemurs, like the Lemurioid animals in Madagascar. What a beautiful place, eh? But anyway, right from Madagascar to Ethiopia, there was just one big, beautiful land, and connected back 50,000 years ago. Not so long ago, really, eh? But anyway, the Southern Hemisphere really shows that there definitely been 3 eras existing, and certainly from Pangaea, when all these animals just roamed around together in one place. You've gone to Mu, and then you've got lakes, you know what I mean? And then Lemuria got lakes kind of starting to form a little bit more into a little bit of bigger lakes, you know, but not certainly an ocean. And then, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, you've got Atlantis. Now you've got oceans opened up, lakes no longer, and you've got a big, huge old civilization all the way up to the present civilization, really. And you've got, cosmic wax that knock us around a little bit, but you've got humans surviving, certainly, as we are today. All built beautiful cities, gorgeous, and a lot are certainly washed away and hidden, under land and water, which you can have a little bit of a look on Google Earth and have a little bit of a look underneath south of the Azores. Go ahead and have a little bit of a look around underneath the ocean, and you're going to see quite a bit going on there. Certainly humans, activity. But anyway, certainly an affinity of plants and animal groups do exist, shows everything all connected at one point. And holy dirt, certainly the holy dirt that we have here, the life colloid really does have a very, very beautiful bethnic existence as bottom of the ocean. Also arboreal, meaning tree, mycelial, meaning good intelligence, and yet Earth rolls over, as we've talked a bit about, 21, 42 degrees every now and then, you know what I mean, and creates the near equator. And new poles form, of course. We've been talking about this. And wherever it remains laid over in space, you know, the equator bulges out again as it sort of starts to be spin and sort of pushes its belly out a bit, flattens its head and its tail on top as it begins a new rotation, and the poles sort of sink in, and land that was above sea level, and it's amazing, even wholly dirt remains. Yet, over a long time, lots of land does sink again, and there you go. See, I think that nobody could certainly rebut any of this, and certainly it just really does squash Darwin and Hegel and everything they've been talking about. And there's a bloke from the Jet Propulsion Lab, speaks for NASA, Yeomans, I think his name is. You know, he tries to dismiss everything because he found someone used a painted picture, mate. But he doesn't really talk about any history, you know. He says, I don't know. I think it's a bit like it's dumb as a beetle. You know, I see it on the buses here a bit. Apparently, he's trying to sort of tell everybody, you know, relax, you know, nothing's coming down the pike, you know what I mean? No calamities have occurred, or if it has, long time ago, yawn. It's amazing that a bloke like that could have a name like Yeomans, isn't it? But anyway, that's another story. Look, the past really existed at one time from England all the way to Australia, mate, you know. Most all the water was only first inland seas, not so connected to each other. I'd like to hear Yeomans from the Jet Propulsion Lab talk a little bit about this sort of stuff, you know what I mean? But anyway, Mu goes back beyond 50,000 years, certainly, and Lemuria really only finished about, you know, 1,500 BC, really, you know, last spot. But most of these outposts lastly in only even going all the way up to early 1600s AD, mate, off South American coast, off Peru, when that last island mass just sunk there. But lots of oral story and things written and that sort of thing there. But ancient Lemuria once connected Australia, you know, to India. And the Indian Ocean really was just a large inland freshwater lake. Mu was really very large and really last finished just really only, you know, some 50,000 years ago, really, most of it. But what was really in the Pacific, Mu, of ancient times, was really connected to, you know, Californian coast, as we began talking in our program here, and very beautiful under the water stone statues of heads of people like Mohawk Atlanteans, very beautiful writing, debunking Darwin, certainly. But we began our program, didn't we, talking a bit about how Darwin began all of everything, 1801, I think he was born, to 1882, and the fossil record definitely does a lot of topsy-turvy stuff, which show his theory just debunks it completely, because you've got dinosaur and human bones all together as footprints, and dinosaur footprints together today. And Darwin and Hegel, they never could consider any of the calamities that we've been talking about, you know. Neither could Yeomans from the Jet Propulsion Lab, but except to say yawn 600,000 years ago. How's that, eh? Huh. Anyway, fossils of the continent and the Earth, and certainly expansion stretch marks that you can see. Oh, that's really scientific, mate, you know. Lemuria's was 50,000 miles long and 3,000 miles wide, mate. It had inhabitants of Atlantis even fled back to Central Asia, and the last remains of Mu certainly right there here in the Californian coast, mate, you know? Yeah. But anyway, the last remains of Mu are certainly here in the Californian coast, and Fiji and Hawaii and Easter Islands and all the submerged cities under the ocean there are still really easily seen today. But certainly start by having a little bit of a look at Kambat, beautiful city 12,000 years ago under the ocean off Pakistan. Yonaguni Island, that's another one that you can have a little bit of a look at. Do we have a bit more time, mate, or what?
I think that's going to be it for today, Dr. Jubb. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Yeah.
Really
we're on the fly. We're doing things on the fly. So I appreciate you having patience with us. We'll catch up with you tomorrow. We've got a beautiful future story, mate. Getting on with everything. Enjoyable, Lukey? Think people are enjoying our story?
Absolutely. I mean, I know there's nothing else I'd rather do.
Love you, mate. All right, we'll catch up with you tomorrow, mate. Catch up with you the story tomorrow. Love you, mate.
Peace.
Ouya chichayo, ouya chichayo, ouya yo. Maybe ouya chichayo, ouya yo. Maybe ouya chichayo.